Hey, everybody, what's going on, Steelers Nation? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome to Steelers Almighty, man. Steelers Almighty, as you guys know, it is the fastest growing Steelers podcast, or Steelers channel, actually, on YouTube. I appreciate all the support that you guys have given us, man. We've been around just for a little while, and we are growing like wildfire, and it's all because of you guys, so I appreciate it. We got a great show for you guys today, man. Great show lined up. First things first. Pat Freiermuth, is it essential that the Steelers get him signed right now? You know, do they need to dilly-dally around? We know that the Steelers don't renegotiate during the season, so do they need to get this done before the season starts? Next thing up, look, you guys asked for it, and we are bringing it to you. DB or Derrick Bell, Steelers DB, is coming to the show. We got him to break down some of Arthur Smith's offense. You guys are absolutely going to want to take a look at that. The guy's incredible on what he knows about not just offensive football, but football in general. But today we're breaking down Arthur Smith and how his offense is going to correlate to what the Steelers have. Next thing up is the defensive line. You know, I think a lot of us Steeler fans thought before the season or even before preseason that the defensive line was going to be an issue. We didn't do a ton to address it. But after the preseason, after offseason, is it a strength now? You know, seeing what we've seen out of this defensive line, can that be a strength? We'll go into that. And then last but not least, you guys are really going to want to stick around for this, is the record prediction. You know, football, it's right around the corner. The season is here. We're going to dive into, we did a record prediction previously the day that the schedule came out. So we're going to dive into that again, kind of give you guys an update on exactly what we think. We haven't changed our mind one iota from what we believe the Steelers are going to be from that day. So let's get into this, man. Again, Steelers Almighty. You can always find us on youtube.com/Steelers. Anywhere that you get a podcast, you can find Steelers Almighty there if you prefer the audio version. And then all social media platforms, Steelers Almighty, we're there. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff, people. Let's get into the show. First things first, is time kind of running out to sign Pat Freiermuth? I think it is. And do the Steelers need to get him signed right away? I think yes. They got to get him signed. For none other than, look, the naysayers talk about Pat Freiermuth. He's got some injury issues. He's not a great blocker. And I understand all of that. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But there's other tight ends in this league that aren't great blockers either, that they just need to get in the way. But Pat Freiermuth, I think, does a little bit more than that when he's healthy, but he doesn't have to be that. You know, I think the Steelers are going to line up in a ton of 12 personnel. Let Darnell Washington be the front side blocker. Pat Freiermuth just needs to cut guys off on the backside. You know, Arthur Smith's offense is going to run a ton of inside and outside zones, so let him do that. You know, and let him just get in the way, because that's all he needs to do. Just get in the way. You don't need to be at the point of attack. He doesn't have to be that. But as a pass catcher, you're kidding yourself if you don't think he's a top 10 tight end as far as a pass catcher. In my opinion, he's probably top 8. But that's what the Steelers need to use him as. Now, he's got to stay healthy. I 100% agree with that. But getting him signed before the season, we still have a few days before that happens. But I think he has to be signed before the season, don't you? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. First of all, why would you take this into the off season? He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Do you need to franchise him? I don't think you do. I don't think it makes sense to franchise Pat Freiermuth. If you want him, then sign him, you know, and that's the whole thing. And I think he wants it. Now, the things have to be true here. Two different things. One, the Steelers have to want him, which I think they probably do. But maybe they're in a wait and see mode. You know, stay healthy. How are you going to work in this offense? The second thing is Pat Freiermuth has to want to be in Pittsburgh. You know, I know a lot of times when we talk about these contracts and maybe guys not getting signed, we look at it from a team standpoint. The team doesn't want to sign him. But the player also has some say in that as well. Do they want to sign there? So, in all accounts, I think Pat Freiermuth probably wants to be here. I think he sees his opportunity, especially in this offense, is going to be gigantic. So I think he wants to take advantage of it. But look, what he had to deal with, through the first couple of seasons of his career, I mean, let's just be honest. Shady quarterback play. Even worse, play calling. Not utilizing the middle of the field where tight ends can usually work and do damage. We didn't see a ton of that. Didn't even see a ton of usage. So I believe that Pat Freiermuth is a key piece to what the Steelers are moving forward. I've been screaming that the Steelers got to spend some money on the offensive side of the football. Well, here's your opportunity, and there might be some naysayers to this. Pat Freiermuth is a top 10 tight end in this league. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about it if used properly. And I believe in Arthur Smith's offense, he's going to be used properly. And since that's the case, he's a top 10 tight end in this league. Give the guy his money. Let's lock him up for the next 3 to 4 years, and let's keep it moving. I think it's essential that he does it. Now, let me ask you a question here, though. We know Cam Heyward got his deal yesterday. Do you think that Pat Freiermuth should have gotten the deal before Cam Heyward? It's a tricky situation, little touchy question. Does it even matter? Number one, does that matter who got the deal done first? Or do you think the Steelers should show that they're trying to prioritize some offense here and sign Pat Freiermuth? Should they have done that first? I don't know. We'll get into the Cam Heyward, contract. We'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I think the Steelers have got to sign Pat Freiermuth. I think it's essential for what they're trying to do. Let's just be honest. Darnell Washington, up to this point, outstanding blocker, not so great as catching the football. Now, again, you got to be used to catch a football. They never used him to try to catch the football last year. Let's hope that he's a bigger part of the passing game this year, or maybe that's not his role. Maybe his role is strictly going to be the extra offensive lineman on the field and a safety valve in passing situations. Maybe that's it. I think that's a waste. You're using a 3rd-round pick on a guy that's doing that. I think would be a waste of a draft pick. I think Darnell Washington is capable of doing more, but the more he can do, I'll be honest with you, the more Darnell Washington can do, I think that's better for Pat Freiermuth because it opens up things on the opposite side. I really believe that. So we got to get Pat signed. Let's go to the poll question. First poll, Freiermuth. Here we go. Whenever it happens, do you think it is imperative that the Steelers re-sign Pat Freiermuth? Now, the one thing is why I said whenever it happens, because it's not going to happen during the season. The Steelers have an ironclad rule. They don't renegotiate during the season. I actually believe that's a great rule. It's ironclad. They're just not going to do that. So answer A, yes, one, or B, no one. And I say yes, one and no one because we have 3 different poll questions. So to make sure we know which question that you're answering in the comment section, make sure you put the one after each one. Whenever it happens, do you think it's imperative that the Steelers re-sign Pat Freiermuth? Personally, if you ask me, I think the answer is absolutely you got to re-sign him. Got to re-sign the man. Let's move on here. So look, people, you guys have been asking for me to see if we can get some other content creators out here, other Steeler fans on the show to collaborate and talk a little bit on the channel. Well, we were able to do that, and it's a good one. Look, this guy, he works for Steelers Now. I don't know if anybody's caught him there, but mainly you know him on Steelers DB, either on Twitter or on YouTube. Derrick Bell is outstanding in what he does, breaking down film, talking football. We had a great time just chit-chatting about what we think this Arthur Smith's offense. So let's get him in here and let's talk about this Arthur Smith offense with Derrick Bell. All right, everybody. So up next, look, we got our man Steelers DB. You guys know him on YouTube. You know him that as on Twitter. Derrick Bell with Steelers Now. Derrick, how is it going today, man? How are you doing?
It's going great, man. I'm coming off vacation mode, so I'm just getting back in the swing of things. But it's game week, and I'm really excited to finally get some real football. I mean, preseason was fun. We had our fun with that. But now we got Steelers Falcons on Sunday. Football is the best time of the year, especially for me. I know it is for you guys as well. So I'm happy you guys are having me on to talk some ball.
Absolutely, man. We appreciate you giving us the time today. I told the fans we were going to do our best to try to get you on, man. So, again, we appreciate you giving us that time. So, Let's just get into this. You know, Arthur Smith coming in, offensive coordinator. Look, I'll be honest. I was skeptical as hell initially, him coming on, just for the simple fact of, you know, everybody talked to me about, well, he was a good offensive coordinator in Tennessee. And, you know, but what he did at Atlanta, I said, hold on, man. I go, he was still the offensive coordinator with the Falcons. I go, we can't I know he had head coaching responsibilities, but he called the plays. That was his offense. We can't overlook that. So first off, let me get your thoughts on him being the Steelers offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as soon as the season concluded, you know, one of my main things that I wrote about was like they needed to get serious about upgrading the quarterback spot and the offensive coordinator spot. And even though like Smith wasn't necessarily the top name that I was kind of like interested in, I do think that they at least hired someone that had an NFL caliber resume. And that's something that you really couldn't say about their previous hires. If you look at like even, you know, just years past, like Matt Canada didn't really have an NFL caliber resume. And even some of his predecessors, I think you could argue that they haven't had as much success as Smith had, you know, most of that being from his days in Tennessee. But, you know, I think it was a decent bet. I think it's going to give them some sort of competency. As you mentioned, like things didn't work out in Atlanta for several different reasons. You know, you can, I mean, as someone that's watched every snap of that, some of games like multiple times over, I think you can point to a myriad of different things, some of which was in his control and some of which that wasn't. But having said that, like, I think, you know, if you're a guy, I think in any stage in life and like you go on to your second act and you get this big promotion and you fail, because that's what he did. He failed in Atlanta. Yeah. It didn't work out for a myriad of different reasons. You know, I think it's going to motivate you to be better in your next stop. And I'm excited to see, like, I mean, I think the core system and his beliefs and what he likes to do on offense has really mostly stayed the same. But I'm interested to see like what kind of wrinkles he can add into this new act, because I think he's going to try to, you know, reassert himself as like one of the better offensive minds in the league. And we'll see if he can do that.
Right. And that's what I think is just reestablishing. He even mentioned that in his interview when people were asking him at minicamp and OTAs, you know, what do you feel about coming? And he was like, look, he was super excited to work for Mike Tomlin. That was the first thing that caught my eye, is that he was that excited about the opportunity. My only question is, I shouldn't say my only question, but one of my questions is do you think that we have the personnel to be able to run an Arthur Smith offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid concern. You know, there's a lot of change on the offensive side of the ball, so I think there's a ton of questions on that. You know, I do think that the heavy investments in the offensive line could potentially pay big dividends. I think that they've got a lot of really good athletes on the offensive line. I think James Daniels, Isaac Seumalo, really good guard tandem. Of course, Seumalo's out for a couple of weeks at least, but even some of the guys they've drafted in recent years, Broderick, fantastic athlete, still a lot to work on technically. Torrey Fautanu working his way back from a little bit of an injury. I think he's a fantastic athlete. He's someone that I was extremely high on coming out of Washington. He was actually my 7th ranked overall prospect coming out of the draft. So I was super excited that they were able to land him all the way down, you know, towards the middle of the first round. And then even, you know, some of the other guys too, like I think Zach Frazier, even though like he's not an overwhelming athlete in his own right from a physical standpoint, like he is really good in his own run game because he takes really good angles. He plays with exceptional leverage. He has that wrestling background. So I think a lot of what they do, it seems like it could potentially fit in the run game. And then they've got 2 talented running backs. So I think, you know, when you look at like the core belief of what this offense is going to look like, it's going to be really zone heavy. They're going to run a lot of outside zone, a lot of mid zone. It's going to be a lot of tight end usage, so they're going to be really heavy in personnel. I think Pat Freiermuth is a pretty solid receiver, and I think Darnell Washington is kind of like the ideal tight end too for this offense. Not just because of, you know, his physicality in the run blocking game, but he's also a qualified pass protector. And some of the max protection looks that Smith likes to do with play action and stuff to push the ball down the field kind of requires him to take on some more difficult assignments. And he showed that he could do that in the preseason. So I think the big questions, like obviously, are around the quarterback, the schematic fit between the quarterbacks of, being Russ and Justin have a lot of similarities. They both are pretty gifted deep ball throwers. So I think that's kind of the idea is you get the chunk plays off play action, you throw the ball down the field. But I think the big question mark you have is like, are they going to be able to avoid sacks? Is there going to be enough guardrails in the offense to keep away some of those negative plays? And are they going to push the ball in the middle of the field? Because if you look back at his success with Tannehill in Tennessee, like they did a lot of damage between the numbers. Like that's really not Russ or Justin's game. Mm-hmm. And then I think the final question, like a lot of people have been talking about, is just the receiver room outside of George Pickens. Are they going to have enough guys to win in one-on-one situations, particularly outside the numbers? I think that's a big question. I don't really have a way to like make fans like feel better about that as we sit here today, but we'll see what it looks like on Sunday.
Well, and that's the thing. I was going to get to the wide receiver question is like in an Arthur Smith offense, it hasn't been an offense that has two great wide receivers. I think you got to have two weapons, but it doesn't necessarily have to be two wide receivers. I think the Steelers have that. I wrote an article about that, earlier in the offseason talking about that specifically. A lot of Steeler fans are just overblown. They just can't get it out of their mind because I think they got it in their mind that we were getting Brandon Ayuk. And I've said for the very beginning, I'm like, the Steelers were the side piece in this. There was no way that he was coming here. They just used us to get what they wanted. It is what it is. Having said that, we're going to find out against the Falcons pretty quickly whether we need two wide receivers or not. I just don't think his offense is predicated on having a dynamic duo like in Philadelphia or in Miami, something like that. I don't think it's predicated, but I do believe that you got to have two weapons. And I think the Steelers do that. Freiermuth got to stay healthy. Don't get me wrong. And they throw the ball to the running backs out of the backfield, not just swing passes, Derrick. They're not just doing that in this offense.
Yeah, I think the big thing too is like, I think, an Ayuk addition or whatever, as awesome as that would have been, I think my most underwhelming kind of part of this whole thing with the receiver room is like, I just felt like that there was more competent options available. Like there was a lot of guys available for relatively cheap contracts that they could have went after, and they just decided not to for whatever reason, that I think are like just better players, even if they're not necessarily even like wide receiver 2 types, but like better players than what I consider like Van Jefferson. And, Roman Wilson's a guy I know that they're high on. He had a pretty limited like route tree at Michigan, but he does do some things I think fit well within the offense. He's excellent on crossers. Obviously, he has the speed to stretch the field horizontally. He can also get vertical. He's a really tough player in between the numbers. And there's a lot to like with him. We'll see how quickly they can get him up to speed. But it just makes me wonder about like an offense or two passers in general that are so predicated on winning outside the numbers. And if you're going to be seeing a lot of cover 3, because that's what the Arthur Smith offense sees a lot of, mainly because of like the tight splits and some of the formations that he rolls out there. Are those guys going to be able to win the one-on-ones on the boundary? I have no doubt that George Pickens is ready to take another leap. I've said that I think he's actually the most important player on the Steelers offense this year, not the quarterbacks, which I think is definitely different than most NFL teams, but got to be able to win outside the boundary. And I think, there are ways that you can mitigate that. Like a lot of what Smith did, like even with a guy like Corey Davis was an excellent blocker. So like them even finding answers from a blocking standpoint at that other receiver position would be big. But I think like the big overall goal of this offense is going to be, they're going to try to be uber efficient on the run game. They're going to try to stay ahead of the chains. They're going to try to stay in positive game scripts, let the defense keep them in everything. And then they're going to try to find enough explosives with the passing game to kind of keep them like quote unquote balanced. But it's not going to be a high powered passing attack. It's hard to see a reality in which that happens.
Right. And let's just keep talking about that as far as the run game is concerned. My thoughts on that are Arthur Smith runs a different type of run game. He does a lot of inside, outside zone stuff. Look, let's just be honest. The Steelers were awful at running any type of outside. You could even say inside zone stuff the last 2 years. Anytime they were able to move the ball on the ground, it was a power run game, off tackle, bringing an extra guard, a tight end, somebody to extra blocking, but basically going straight ahead. I think the additions of the athletic linemen, getting Broderick Jones in the lineup, Troy Fautanu, that's going to help. Although Isaac Seumalo, he'll be out for a little bit. He's super strong at the point of attack. James Daniels at the point of attack. Zach Frazier, again, you talked about he's not a great athlete, but for his position, I think he's pretty good, especially with that wrestling background. He knows how to use angles. So there's a lot of Steeler fans out there that are concerned with the Arthur Smith running game that we haven't been able to do that. But I think the personnel, and also, look, let's just be honest, the imagination, some of the formations, we could basically call every Pittsburgh Steelers run play based on who was in the personnel group and how they aligned the last 2 years. It was that predictable. I don't think we're going to get that with Arthur Smith.
Yeah, I think too, like that's the thing too. I think with Smith, like he has a very distinct way that he wants to play, but he will do some interesting stuff. I mean, he'll use, like we've already seen in the preseason, he'll come out in 13 personnel to get teams in base, and then he'll go empty. And like that, there is some things that you can do to scheme up matchups with those personnel groupings. I mean, I think what you said, like there is a lot of people that are still, I think, worried about like what Najee or Jalen or this offense could look like in a more zone heavy scheme. I think that kind of goes back to a couple things. Like one, it was what I was talking about earlier with like finding kind of the knobs to tinker as far as what type of changes can Smith implement into his offense. Like I would personally like to see him lean into a little bit more gap stuff. I would like to see more pullers, mainly because the Steelers have a good set of offensive linemen that are really capable in space. Frazier's a really good puller. Fautanu's a really good puller. We saw Broderick Jones, the type of impact that he could have on some of the tackle pull stuff last year. So, I mean, I would like to see like more run game diversity. I mean, I think last year, the Falcons were like 84% like zone rushing plays. I mean, that was by far the most in the NFL. And like, I don't think that it needs to be that distinct, and it shouldn't be. I'm hoping it's not. But we'll see. But I do think that like the Steelers have two talented running backs that will figure it out. Like there's different ways. The additions on the offensive line should help, but there are also different ways to get the backs, particularly Najee Harris, headed more downhill on their tracks. Like I think that we're going to see more pistol. I think they hid some of that stuff in the preseason, but like the pistol just makes a lot of sense for me in terms of like getting Justin, some packages, maybe in the red zone, third down, but also like Russ. Like I think that Russ can operate in that. And it's a good way to kind of get into a lot of the things that Smith wants to do, but still, get some of the benefits for being in shotgun. So I'm interested to see what it looks like, man. This is definitely the first time like in my like time, like doing this, that I've spent this much time like studying one particular scheme or system. So I'm interested to see what it looks like. I want to see the changes. I want to see what works, what doesn't. But it's definitely one of the things I'm most watching for.
Gotcha. Let me follow up on what you mentioned a couple of different times. We have two obviously good running backs, which I think everybody kind of knows that. Mm-hmm. What do you think the splits are going to be? Just if everybody's healthy, what do you think the running back splits are going to be? They asked Mike Tomlin that question today. Mike Tomlin gave a Mike Tomlin answer. But what do you think are actually going to be the splits this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough to say. I think that I don't know, as time has wore on, I think that I'm actually a little bit higher on Najee Harris in this offense than I think the majority of people are. And I also just think about the backs that Smith's had success with. Obviously, Derrick Henry, he's just a completely different beast. You can't really compare anyone to him, but he is a bigger back. And then like even look at a guy like Tyler Algier. Like 2 years ago, the Atlanta offense was kind of humming a little bit, despite some holes from a personnel standpoint. Like they probably had their best year that they had in 2022. Algier went over 1,000 rushing yards. You look at Cordero Patterson, I think a lot of people kind of assume that he's a speed back, but like because he's a former wide receiver, but he's a power back too. Like Smith likes the downhill brawler types. And I think that Najee, even though he hasn't necessarily played in a lot of outside zone stuff, I do think that he could fit into this system with some necessary tweaks. And like, I think Jalen too, like, I think the question with Jalen that I think everybody wants answered is like, what happens if his usage does get, I guess, increased? Like, is he able to continue to be as uber efficient as he's been? I think normally like logic and like data will tell you like the more usage someone gets, the less their efficiency, is indicated or whatever. But I think that the split it's probably going to be pretty similar to last year, like maybe like 60-40, 55-45. But I could also see like both of these guys having more rushing yards than they did last year, just because I think the volume is going to be there. Like Smith's a guy, like, this is not one of my favorite parts of like his offense, but like you can be down 2 scores in the second half and he's not going to abandon the run game. Like he's still going to be pounding the ball. So like these guys are, there's nothing necessarily preventing him from handing the ball off like 30 times a game. And like, you just don't see that a lot in the NFL, but like, regardless of situation, he wants to run the ball. And we'll see. A lot of this offense is going to be on the run game shoulders. And, but I think they have 2 talented backs that could potentially make this thing work.
Gotcha. So I got a question from a couple of my shows. Guy, we're
Okay.
talking about Jack Colletto. And
Okay.
so I thought I'd save this one for you. He didn't make the 53 man. And I'm like, man, look, I love me some 21, 22, 23 hell, yeah. I even love Derrick, even 20 personnel. That's how far back I go with it, man. I love a fullback. Now I know he's on the practice squad, and you have that potential to be brought up. But were you surprised he didn't make the team? I know the Steelers didn't use a fullback last year, but Arthur Smith usually keeps one on his offense. So were you surprised he didn't make the 53 man initially?
It's definitely a good shout, especially from your audience. It definitely shows that, they're paying attention too. Because, I think the big thing with Smith's offense, like you look at like Keith Smith, a guy that played about 17% of their offensive snaps last year. It was a huge part of their offense. Like a lot of the things that they like to do in the zone run game, he likes to do a lot of lead stuff. They have some cool stuff that they can do in two-back settings. My main question was the entire time I was hoping, while I was at training camp in Latrobe with Steelers Now, or just through the preseason, I was kind of looking, okay, who's going to be the fullback? It seemed like it was really Colletto the entire time. I don't even know that I saw another player take reps at fullback. So for him not to be on the 53 man roster was a little bit surprising. So I don't know. I don't know that Connor Heyward is that type of player. Maybe they could potentially try him. Michael Pruitt is also on the roster. Pruitt actually started, he's been with Smith for a long time. He played with him in Tennessee. Smith brought him to Atlanta, and then they brought him here to Pittsburgh. But Pruitt actually started kind of as a quasi fullback or H-back. So before actually moving to more of an inline tight end role in recent years. So those are potential options that they could be looking into. It's funny. I actually just posted a video on my channel on their practice squad signing Ben Skoranek from the Texans. He got traded there. He was with the Rams the last 3 years. Skoranek's a really interesting player because when I started combing through his film, they did some pretty cool stuff with him in the backfield. He's a receiver by designation, but they would put him in the backfield. He's a very qualified blocker, plays with a lot of intensity. He's 6'3", 225. So he has the frame to be an effective blocker. Maybe definitely not an every down fullback type, but I kind of wonder, given the fact that that dude also had 12 special teams tackles last year, I kind of wonder if he's a guy that they elevate, and maybe Smith tries to get kind of creative because him and McVay, they've worked together in the past, and there is some carryover between the two schemes. So I think that they could get Skoranek up to date or whatever on the system, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. That's one of the questions I don't have an answer to, but I'm hoping we get an answer to soon, because I don't want to see the two back stuff completely done away with.
No, I would like to see it. Like I said, I'm a big fan of it. And again, I was excited about that part of it, bringing that to the offense, but we'll see what happens. I still don't think that the 53, I know we're sitting here, we're recording this on a Tuesday. It's going to come out on Wednesday. I get all of that. I still don't know that the Steelers are done trying to finalize this roster, man. I just don't. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Last question before I get you out of here, man. Look, the Arthur Smith's offense, the passing concepts are kind of layered. A lot of play action, but they're layered to one side, so it makes it easier per se for a quarterback, to go to 1, 2, 3 versus across the field 1, 2, 3. Is this an offense that Russell Wilson can actually thrive in? Because there's a lot of people out there that are saying no, even that it's layered. They're saying, yeah, that's just not what he thrives in. I've pushed back against that a little bit and think, well, hold on a second. Yeah, first of all, that's never been an issue with his accuracy. It's always been about holding on to the ball too long or getting out of it too quick and not seeing everything down the field. But his accuracy's never been the issue here. So do you think that this layered, I guess the layered passing tree or just route concepts, can he thrive in this?
Yeah, it's such a complicated question because Russ has a very distinct way that he wants to play. You're not going to change Russ. They try. Russ has played with so many different coordinators, and he's always played Russ ball. And he's had a tremendous amount of success over his career. Over the course of his career, he's made 9 Pro Bowls or something like that. He's had a very successful career. It's just I think that some of the downtick in his production over the last 2-3 years has been kind of a combination of some injuries, kind of affecting some of his effectiveness in some different ways. Maybe a little bit in an accuracy standpoint, but that's still not necessarily like a hole in his game. And I think like the big thing has just been like the mobility. Like he hasn't been able to extend plays, and he's not quite as dynamic with the ball in his hands because he is a scrambler by nature. And some of those like the concepts that you're referring to, like I kind of call them like guardrails within the offense. I think that's a lot of what the play action passing game is designed to do, because that's stuff that like Russ can do. It's not a lot of like progressions. It's kind of like, okay, I'm alerting this if I get this like one safety or two safety look. If not, I'm going to read this 1 to 2 to check down. And like that, it provides good necessary guardrails for your quarterbacks without having to do a bunch of full field reads. Because like the thing with Russ is like, because of his height, like a lot of people don't really like, I think the way that we discuss quarterback height is kind of funny, but what matters is like a lot of the backside digs that are even like in this offense, I just don't think that Russ is going to be able to hit them because he's not tall enough. And that's just because like as the play progresses, you get 2.5 seconds in, the pocket starts to collapse a little bit. It's difficult for a guy who's less than 6 foot tall to find those throwing windows to kind of access the middle of the field. That's why some of those concepts are not necessarily going to work, but Russ can still play outside the numbers. Like he's still going to be able to do like the sail concept stuff, the flood concepts. You're still going to be able to use like a lot of your quick hitters. I actually do think he was a little bit better in quick game last year than maybe I had seen him previously. So maybe that's something that they can lean into a little bit more. But I think the idea is like, I don't think the Steelers are naive enough to think that they're going to be getting like 2019 version of Russ. I think the idea is that they can like min-max him to the point where it's like, okay, we need you to provide explosive plays off play action. We need you to win outside the numbers. We need you to give us like a couple third down conversions to the per game. We need you to scramble for a first down or two. And they want this to be a really low volume passing attack. And I think that that's, how good can an offense like that be? I'm kind of skeptical a little bit, but about the ceiling of it, but like, could it provide enough competency to keep this team in a fight for a playoff spot and to keep them at least on schedule a little bit to where they can give the defense a break? I think that is definitely within the realm of possibility. So we'll see. I think the main thing that I still question is like, how healthy is Russ right now? Like, is he 100%? Like, we didn't really see him move around at all. He missed a lot of time with the calf. I really am curious about that, but we'll find that out for sure on Sunday as for terms of like how he's moving.
Yeah. That was another thing for me is I'm just not sure he's 100%. But it also let me know that the Steelers had absolutely no intention of giving Justin Fields his job because Russ wasn't 100%. And you had Russ or Justin Fields out there in preseason game number 2 running around with the 3s and 4s offensive line at the end of the game. People get, well, he's just trying to put him out. I'm like, no, that's not what you do with a guy that's trying to battle for a starting job. So, Derrick, man, I want to thank you a lot, man, for giving us the time. I know I went over it at the beginning, man, but tell everybody where they can find all your good stuff, man.
Yeah, it's at Steelers_DB on Twitter and on YouTube. And then all of our written work can be found at SteelersNow.com.
Perfect, man. Thank you again for giving us your time. We will bring you back as many times as you can find the time. We will bring you back, man. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on. It was a good time for sure.
All right. Thank you. Man, we want to thank Derrick Bell, a.k.a. Steelers DB. You can find him, like I said, on Twitter at Steelers_DB. You can find him right here on YouTube. Make sure you guys go check out all his stuff, man, because he does an outstanding job of, number one, understanding football. The man knows football, breaks it down to a level where the novice football guy can understand. But the stuff that he does with the all 22, I can't wait to get on there and talk some of that with him because, like I said, he knows football, knows exactly what he's talking about, breaks it down in a sophisticated way, but also in a way that a football novice can understand, man. So make sure you guys show that guy some love. Go check out his page. And again, we will bring him back as many times as we can possibly get him on the show. Moving on, man. Look, we're at the point we want to thank all of our followers, all of our subscribers. Thank you guys again. We've been here. April 4th was the first day out here. So we want to thank everybody that has subscribed, followed, commented, everything, all the support that you guys have showed. We appreciate it. Look, we know that supers are one way that you guys can help support the show. We love that. You see down there, Venmo, Cash App, all that good stuff. We appreciate it. But look, that's just one way. Likes, follow, subscribe, big time comments. We love the comments, man. love going back and forth with you guys, even if we don't agree. That's fine. We're not here to agree on everything, my man. And ladies and gentlemen, it's great. It's great. We love going back and forth. So, and hit the notification bell so you know exactly when all Steelers Almighty videos come out. As you see there, this is our schedule during the week as the season gets here. Now, granted, the schedule has got to be a little bit fluid because the Steelers are going to play on Monday nights and some Thursday nights. Hell, I think they play on Christmas, which is a Wednesday night. So some of these times and things are going to change. Having said that, this is going to be the schedule for most of the season. You know, we got the weekly podcast coming out on Wednesday. We got the pregame live, you know, an hour leading up to kickoff every Sunday or every game. But for the majority, it's going to be on Sunday. And then we got that live 15 minutes after the game. You know, that live 15 minutes after the game, we're going to be right here. You guys jump in. Let us know exactly what you thought. You see the hotline. Make sure everybody is calling into that hotline. So that way we can put you on this podcast. Literally. Call in, leave your name, your email address, where you're calling from, and your YouTube user ID, you know, or username, whatever you want to call it. Call that number, 412-444-8390. Again, that number, 412-444-8390. Start leaving messages, man. The season is here. It is here. So we appreciate all the support that you guys have given us. So thank you very much for that. Let's move on. All right. So the defensive line, we've talked about it. That was a big time concern going into OTAs, in mini camp, training camp. We thought, look, we didn't do enough on the defensive line. We thought it needed to be addressed. And it's because of what happened last year. You know, the defensive line didn't look great last year. Now, you could say, look, Cam Heyward wasn't healthy, missed a lot of time, so the D-line wasn't supposed to look great. Okay, but then you don't address it. And that was kind of, okay, it's a little troubling. We don't really address this in the draft. What are we doing? The only draft pick we did was a 6-rounder, and he, at the end of, he was basically the 52nd, 53rd guy on the roster. It's like, what are we doing? But Cam Heyward signs back. He said he's ready to play. He said he's back at it, and he gets a new contract. You know, I was against this, giving him the new deal. 3 years, $45 million. I screamed about it all day yesterday. I didn't like what the Steelers had done. Well, then you start getting a little bit more of the financial stuff coming out. And now I don't mind flip-flopping. It was basically the Steelers did what I called for all along. Even before this, I said the Steelers can't give him any more guaranteed money. He's getting $16 million this year. First of all, I think that was too much, but he can't get any more than that. Well, he isn't. He's not getting more. You know, the $29 million in new money that they keep talking about, that's not guaranteed. So if it's not guaranteed money and it's $16 million is all he was going to get, he was going to get that anyway. Not a bad deal. It gives the team security. Look here. It opens up some more cap space, which that's not really that big of a deal because we've got a ton of cap space that we're not even using this year. So opening it up for this year, it's not that big of a deal. And I know people are talking about, well, what about next year, Big B? Well, he was going to be off the books next year altogether. So it doesn't matter. He wasn't going to count anything next year. So, and I think Cam likes it so he's not forced to going somewhere else. And when I mean forced into going somewhere else, I mean, if Cam wants to play football, let's just say he has an okay year this year. Not great, not bad, just an okay season. But he still wants to play. The Steelers will allow him to come back. I'm sure they will, but he's going to have to take a huge pay cut. You know, he's not going to get $15 million next year at 36. They'll probably say, look, we'll keep you at 4, you know, and yes, we would love to have you back. Okay, but Cam got his money for this year, and he's not forced because if he wants to play and he didn't have a contract with the Steelers next year and the Steelers just say, nope, we don't want you here, then he's got to go somewhere else. And he didn't want to do that. I mean, he all but said, I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to be a one helmet guy. Well, now he's going to be a one helmet guy because I don't think there's any chance that the Steelers cut him, even if he has a bad year. Because again, they're not giving him any guaranteed money the next 2 years. So Cam, you come out, you play well. Yeah, you might have to take, not might, you'll definitely have to take a pay cut next year based on the salary structure. They're not going to give you that, but it is what it is. He can retire as a Steeler. I'm back on the deal. Look, they did exactly what I was calling for. I can't be a hypocrite and say, well, don't give them any more guaranteed money. Then the Steelers don't give them any more guaranteed money and then still scream. No, I can't do that. Not going to do that. So good deal all the way around for both sides. But is he the only piece? I don't think he is. Look, there were other guys that stepped up this year. Some young offensive linemen stepped up this year. Keanu Benton, he was a monster last year. Just didn't know how to be a pro. Just didn't. Body wasn't in pro shape as a rookie. Most guys aren't. Well, it is now. He is absolute monster. He looks like a monster. I think Keanu Benton is the key to the Steelers defense with push up the middle, and I think he's going to have a phenomenal season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. DeMarvin Leal. I mean, look, I was a guy that thought, yeah, he might get cut at the beginning of training camp. Didn't think he was going to be that guy. Never thought the light would turn on. We've been waiting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, it looks like the light turned on for this young man. He came to the Steelers as he was young, and the first couple of seasons, he wasn't even playing at the end of last year. Well, the light has turned on. It's turned on so much that when Marcus Golden retired, the Steelers didn't go out and sign a fourth outside linebacker. They said, you know what, DeMarvin Leal has done so much and is so athletic and shown us so much, he can be that extra guy if we need it. I love it. Don't you love when young guys that aren't necessarily, they don't live up to stuff early. Everybody doesn't peak at the same time, man. They just don't. And it just didn't happen for him. What looks like it is now, I absolutely love it. He's starting to look like the guy that we drafted a couple years ago in the third round. I love to see that, man. Some vets. Look, Montravius Adams, we know what he is. We know what he brings to the table. Just a stud inside in the role that he plays, which is a backup nose tackle role. Can't be moved. Takes several guys to block him. Yes. Larry O. I think we can all agree Larry O had a bad year last year. He did. And I think he would admit it. Well, maybe he'll admit it. But even if he doesn't, we know he had a bad year. Through OTAs, minicamp, and training camp, it looks like Larry O understands I had a bad year. I'm better than this. I got to get back to what I used to be at, how I got the contract that I got. Yeah, we've seen it so far. We have seen it so far. And then Dean Lowry. Look, yeah, he was hurt at the beginning of training camp, but Dean Lowry signed with the Steelers. He could have went anywhere. He literally could have went anywhere and been in the same role. He's going to play a role on the Steelers this season. That's going to happen. I like what he's done. Once he got out there and was able to play, he was coming off a little bit of a shoulder injury. He got out there, able to do his stuff. He is going to help. Look, the D-line is now a strength, people. It is. I know that a lot of people thought that it was going to be a weakness coming into the season. I thought it was going to be a weakness coming into the season. But from what we've seen from OTAs through training camp, it looks like the defensive line is a different beast. It looks like they are a different beast, something that we may be able to count on. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited. Let's go to the poll question, people. Let's pull it up here. Would you be comfortable going into next season without Cam and with the lineman currently on the roster? A, answer is yes to, or B, no to. My thing about that is, even though I would be okay with the guys that we have on the roster, I think we need some new blood. I think the Steelers, I've said it, they got to take a defensive lineman with the first pick next year. No matter where they pick, I think a defensive lineman's got to be the first guy. I know people are going to say wide receiver. man, you know how many wide receivers are going to be out there? We can get one in the second round wherever we pick, or free agency, whatever the case may be. I think defensive line has to be the pick in the first round. So while I like the guys on the roster, I would still like to say, you know what? We got to get better guys here and younger. Get a little bit younger on the defensive line. I think that would be okay. So my thing would be, I like the roster, but no, I wouldn't be comfortable next year. Let's upgrade. Okay, people. Moving on. I mean, we got to talk about the record. We got to talk about the season. Let's talk about this schedule. Everybody talks about how daunting it is, about how it's super backloaded. Well, if it's that, then let's talk about what the Steelers are going to do. Now, I made these predictions literally the day that the schedule came out. We had a live podcast that we did on that night. It was almost live as the schedule was rolling out, so we made these predictions, put it all together on exactly what was what and what we thought the Steelers record were going to be. So let's go through this and let's break this down game by game. First up, look, we got the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are going to be a better football team this year than they were last year just because they got better quarterback play. But I think the Steelers win the game, man. I really do. I think we go in his first game. I just think we get after him a little bit. Kirk Cousins coming off the injury, going to have some rust, more than Russell Wilson will. And I think the Steelers come away with that football game. Big game coming up on Sunday. Next up, we got the Broncos. The Steelers are just better than the Broncos. Rookie quarterback. You know how Mike Tomlin and his defense get after rookie quarterbacks, disguise coverages, all that kind of stuff. I think we go on the road and we beat the Broncos. Next up is the Chargers. Again, we're better than the Chargers. We're just better. The first home game, we win that game, man. We win that game. Then we go to the Colts. 3 out of the first four are on the road. I'm not a believer in Anthony Richardson. I know people are going to talk about, well, look what happened last year. We're a different football team than we were last year. We couldn't stop the run. Linebackers were decimated. Safeties decimated. We didn't have guys. As long as the injury bug doesn't hit us, I think the Steelers are going to be fine in this football game. Again, I am not a believer in Anthony Richardson. I'm just not. I've seen enough. Never was a believer in the draft at Florida last year. He got all this praise. I'm like, he didn't do anything, but whatever. Steelers win the football game. Then the Cowboys come to town. The Cowboys are in disarray. The quarterback doesn't want to be there. The owner doesn't want the quarterback to be there. They're talking back and forth. They don't have a legitimate running back on their football team at this point. Maybe they'll have one by the time the Steelers play. We'll find out. Either way, the Steelers win the football game. And I know what you're thinking. 5-0, Big B, you're crazy. Hey, man, these are football games the Steelers can win. They're football games they can win. Yes, I know. Yes, in the history, they've given up some games. Well, why do we have to do that? That's not the rule. The rule doesn't say you got to lose just because in the past that you lost. So I'm not going down that road. Not this year. Moving on. We go to the Raiders. The Raiders are going to be battling for the top pick. I don't think their roster is very good. It was a close game last year. And again, it's the National Football League. You're not blowing teams out. That's not how this works. Just go win. And I think we do. We go beat the Raiders. And then we come home to the Jets. I've got the Jets winning the AFC East. I think they are the best team. If Aaron Rodgers comes back and just plays decent football, he doesn't have to play spectacular football, just decent football with what they have on defense. I think they win the East. Unfortunately, they come back and they beat the Steelers at home for our first loss of the year. Then the Giants. They were trying to get rid of their quarterback, couldn't do it, decided not to do it. I think it's going to end up getting some people fired there. They're going to be battling for the top pick in the draft to get a quarterback. The Steelers beat the Giants at home. Then we go to the Commanders after a bye week. Commanders are going to be better. They're going to be better, but I still believe the Steelers are better than them, So I just think this is a game we go on the road and win. Again, I know what you guys are going to say. Big B, you're nuts. No, I'm not, man. Just this is the way the schedule lays out. If the back end of the schedule is so difficult, why can't we win the games that we're supposed to win? That's all I'm going by. That's what I'm going by. Now we get into the meat of this thing. The Ravens come to town. We got Lamar Jackson's number, though, don't we? Yeah, we do. 2-4 against us. We beat the Ravens at home. We're not getting swept by anybody in the division. That's not happening. We know that. We got Lamar Jackson's number. We beat him at home. It's that simple. And then it gets tough. We go to the Browns. And as much as I make fun of the Browns have a better roster than we do. And I think we go there and we get beat. I do. It's tough. I know. But the Brown, if Deshaun Watson, again, same thing like Aaron Rodgers, if Deshaun Watson just gives them decent quarterback play, and I'm not sure he's capable of that, but if he does, the Browns are going to be really good, man. They're going to be damn good. Then we go to the Bengals the next week. Not going to work out again. Joe Burrow back, injury prone, but if he's healthy, Bengals are good. They've tried to fix their defense. I think they've done that a little bit. Bengals get us. Then we get the Browns right back. The Browns are not sweeping the Pittsburgh Steelers, okay? I don't care how good their roster is. I don't care how good their defense is. They're not sweeping us, period, end of story. Then the Eagles come to town. Eagles are pretty good. They may have fixed their defense. It looks like they fixed their defense. The Eagles beat us. Yuck. Then the Ravens. Look, we know what the Ravens are. And while we do have Lamar Jackson's number, this late in the season, the Ravens usually have their stuff together. I know we beat them last year at the end of the year, but look, they weren't playing a lot of their guys. We were playing our guys. We were fighting to get into the playoffs. They had already had home field advantage through the playoffs already wrapped up. But by this time in the season, the Ravens are usually playing their best football. The Ravens beat us at home. Then the Chiefs, Christmas Day. Look, my wife is a diehard Chiefs fan because she's from Kansas City. My house would be so much better on Christmas if the Steelers could beat the Chiefs. It would just be bring joy to my heart. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the Chiefs are going to be way better this year. Their defense is still going to be outstanding like it was last year. And I think the offense is going to be way better. I think the Chiefs, first of all, I think the Chiefs get this to try to lock up home field advantage. I think they beat us, unfortunately, at home. Last game of the year, the Bengals come to town. You know how we are the last game of the year. You know how we are when we're trying to get into the playoffs. This is a Mike Tomlin special. I think the Steelers beat the Bengals. I just do. And probably knock the Bengals out of playoff contention. I think this is a game that decides the last wild card spot. And the Steelers end up beating the Bengals. All in all, 11-6. Don't do well down the stretch. Lose 5 of 7. But that's the schedule. That's just what it is. And here's the thing about this schedule. And you might say, come on, B, they're not going to lose 5 of 7 down the stretch. I'm not saying, or I am saying they will. That means they got to win all these games at the beginning of the schedule. And if we don't do that, we're going to have a losing season. I mean, if we don't beat these teams, and you could just look to last year, we should have won 12 football games. We lose to Arizona and New England at home. Now, don't get me wrong. We were playing Mitchell Trubisky, so I understand that. But we still lost the football game, And hell, against Arizona, we got run over. That didn't have anything to do with Trubisky. We just couldn't stop him, which was disgusting. So, yes, those games we have to win. We got to be able to win those early games. And if we do, 11-6 is not out of the question. If we don't, it could get ugly. It could get ugly, man. So, poll question. Let's get to the poll question. First things first, man. How many games do you see the Steelers winning in 2024? A, 4-6. B, 7-9, C, 10-12, or D, 13 plus? How many games do you see your Pittsburgh Steelers winning in 2024? It's tricky. It's tricky. You know me, I got C, but we will see, man. We will see. So let's move on. Look, man, all the talk is over. It's football time. This is what we're waiting for. This is what we have been waiting for. You know, we've listened to all the pundits tell us why the Steelers can't do this or why the Steelers can do that. You know, we've heard it all, from bad quarterback play to unsure offensive line. Well, all that goes out the window, man. It's time to strap it up. It's time for the Steelers to go play some football. Do we still have questions? Of course we do. But you know what? They all get answered. We don't have to worry, or we don't have to wonder. We don't have to do anything about these questions any longer, because they're going to play a football game, man. It's time for us to be excited. It's time for us to be emotional. It's time for us to be irrational. And you know, Big B, you know I'm going to be irrational. It's time to be irrational. All of the emotions. It's time, people. It's football time. Here we go. Here we go. So I appreciate it, man. I'm ready. I'm ready. I am hyped. I want this. The season can't get here fast enough. I'm going to have my beer. I'm going to have my wings. All the stuff I shouldn't be eating. Big B should be trying to lose weight. Football season, all bets are off. All bets are off, damn it. It is what it is. So let's get this thing going. I'm ready. Remember, like, follow, subscribe, all the good stuff. Also remember, man, pregame on Sunday, an hour before kickoff. We're going to be live. Come in 15 minutes after the game. We're going to be live. Make sure you jump in. Make sure you call the number 412-444-83. Is that what it is? Yeah, 8390. Again, 412-444-8390. Make sure you call that number. Jump in. Leave your questions, comments, all that stuff, man. Football's here. That's it. That's all we want. Football is here. I love you guys. Thank you guys for the support. Aloha.